What is up, football fans? I am Danny Austin. This is the Live from the 55 podcast. We're here in our Nation Network studios in Martyr Loop, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. It is Wednesday afternoon, late afternoon, August 9th, 2 days before my older sister's birthday, which none of you guys care about, but I need to remember because I need to call her. Guys, been a fun week. Been lots going on around the CFL. Ty Katz and Tommy Condell parted ways. Scott Milanovic stepped in. That's a big story. Been watching the quarterback situation all over the league. Sounds like Chad Kelly was taking first-team reps for the Argos today in Toronto. That's big news. Vernon Adams Jr. has been taking first-team reps for the BC Lions in advance of their game against the Calgary Stampeders on Saturday. That's going to be a big story. Vernon's apparently sporting a big brace. So very curious to see how that goes. But, we got a fun episode. We're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about Darrell Walker being loosed by the Riders. But honestly, we had two really fun guests today. Farhan Lalji from TSN. You know him. You love him. One of the leading voices on CFL football and football in general in this country. A guy who has his hands in everything from the university. He's been a high school coach. He obviously does a lot of NFL coverage as well as covering our dear league here. He is honestly, he's everywhere and anywhere, and the guy is the best in the business in my opinion. And was lucky enough to kind of hang out with him last week ahead of the Stampeders beating the Argos here in Calgary, and just it was such a joy, and he's got such a unique perspective. So I was delighted to have him on today's episode. And then we also have John Bender. I think it's his third time on the show. So him and Ian Busby are my most regular guests. Bender is is a Stampeder alum. I watched quite a few games with him, and he has what I love about Bender is I just love him as a dude, but B, he has played offensive line, which I think is a position that's so important and so many of us don't really understand, myself included. So, took the opportunity to kind of talk to him about state of the Stamps O-line, state of the Stampeders in general. Lots of Stampeders there. So I was just talking about everything going around in the league, and we're in mid-August, sort of. Are we? It's August 9th. We're still early August, but we're nearing early August, which means that if you kind of squint, you can see Labor Day coming down the road there. It feels like, I thought, to be perfectly honest with you, 2 weeks ago that I had a better understanding of who was good and who was not good than I do now. We've seen Stamps drop the Argos. We saw the Bombers absolutely crush the Lions this week. Really, it's like the only thing that I feel like I know for sure is that the Elks are trash, and I don't want the Elks to be trash anymore. I want them to win. I take no joy just because I live in Calgary and seeing Edmonton fail, at least when it comes to the Elks, and at least when it comes to them failing this badly. But I'll be honest with you, I think they're going to get absolutely destroyed, just wrecked by the Bombers on Thursday night. Who knows? Stranger things have happened, but not really. I don't believe that. That would be the strangest thing. The Elks somehow pulling out a win against the Bombers. But yeah, beyond that, you got the Riders in Montreal, Cody Fajardo revenge game. That goes Friday. You got Stamps Lions, super interesting game. Stamps coming off their biggest win of the year. Lions coming off their biggest loss of the year. Lots of intrigue there. God, if the Stamps somehow pull that off and win, we are having a very different conversation for the rest of the season than we have been so far. Lions are obviously the favorites there, and they deserve to be. But, it's my job to be interested. I am very interested in that game. And then finally, Ottawa Red Blacks. We don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation there, but I expect Toronto to bounce back. Ottawa, I am not as convinced by Dustin Crum as some, but who knows? Guys, it's a fun slate of games this weekend, but we got a great slate of guests. So let's just get into it right away. Let's hit Farhan, and then we got Bender coming up too. Guys, let's say you're having a party. Let's say you're having a picnic. Let's say you're having any occasion. Got to talk to you about Fraser and Fig, because I love these guys. Here in Martyr Loop, a couple storefronts down from our studio here. Fraser and Fig, man, these guys do these delicious elevated cheese and charcuterie boxes. They're made with all these fresh artisanal ingredients, on-demand grazing, pick up, delivery. You got it. Just let them know what you want. They will get it to you. Honestly, I'm such a big fan. I had a picnic a little while ago. I brought one of their curated boxes, and it was a huge hit. I looked great. People loved it. We're hungry. They weren't hungry anymore. These ready-to-go boxes, they got them in 4 sizes. All their boxes come with meat, cheese, dried fruit, fresh fruit, nuts, olives, pickles, and carrots. Their selections vary from month to month. Choices are always new. Just because they've had one doesn't mean you've had them all. I love Fraser and Fig. I love having them as a sponsor. They're the best. Make sure you check them out. Tell them Live from the 55 sent you. All right, Farhan Lalji from TSN. I follow you on Twitter, so I know the answer to this, but it's Vernon Adams Jr. starting this weekend, right?
It is. It is Vernon Adams Jr. starting. Well, it looks like it. I mean, he practiced again, got all the first team reps again. Looked fine yesterday. He's got this big cumbersome brace on, so it's going to take some getting used to. But I'd be shocked if he didn't get to start. And Rick Campbell said yesterday that if he got through the week without any setbacks, the plan as of yesterday was for him to start. So, but besides that, how are you? What's going on?
I'm
I saw you
doing
in
well,
Calgary
man.
the other day. Is life good?
Yeah, life's good. We hung out for a little bit last week and then watched a game that sort of completely turned the Stampeder season on its head a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm still on some level trying to figure out what that means. And it's such an interesting, like, as a football reporter going into this game against the Lions, who are coming off their worst loss of the season, this beatdown versus the Stamps team that's coming off its best win of the season. And then also just kind of feeling like that doesn't actually mean all that much. And the Lions at home with a bit of rest are probably going to be a lot better than they were against Winnipeg. So I wish I was going to Vancouver. That would be a very fun, fun trip. It always is. But I'm not going to be there. I assume you will be there.
I will. I got a busy couple of days because I'm actually going to the Seattle Mariners game tonight. It is Bark at the Park night in Seattle, so I get to take my puppy, and I'm bringing my kids along. So bonus for them. But the real reason is I get to take my puppy because it's the Mariners and we love them out here on the West Coast. I get into Twitter battles all the time with Blue Jay fans, which is always fun to do because I hate the Blue Jays.
So,
and then I've got, of course, we've got the Lions game Saturday, and then I take the red eye after the game to Toronto to host the panel on Sunday. So, so lots going on. But look, as far as the Lions are concerned, yeah, they're going to be better. There's no way they can be as bad as they were against Winnipeg. Winnipeg was absolutely on. I don't want to overplay the short week, long week thing because at the start of the year, BC goes into Winnipeg on a short week and winds up taking it to the Bombers. And a year ago, BC's got a long week. Winnipeg comes to BC on a short week and takes it to the Lions and Nathan Rourke. So, but at the same time, I do think there comes a point in a game when things are going against you, you probably have a little less fight to come back and get into it. So I don't think BC can be as bad as they were in that game. Getting Vernon back is also going to help. But also, I just have never felt Calgary's as bad as the record, right? And they're going to be better. They're going to have some confidence because people are going to say, oh, well, it's because Chad Kelly got hurt. Chad Kelly wasn't doing much, right? Like Chad Kelly had one big-time throw, right, that led to a touchdown. And other than that, through 2.5 quarters, Calgary was able to contain them a little bit, right? So I think Calgary did some good things. Their commitment to the run mattered big time. Now you're going to get Kadeem Carey back into their lineup this week, so they're going to be better as well. So I think this is what we would expect from BC Calgary coming into the season, as opposed to maybe what we thought a week ago, right? Where BC was going to be ridiculously heavy favorites and people wouldn't give Calgary a chance. I think, Calgary's now finding a way to play however they need to in a given game, right? When you look at how conservative that game plan was, all run, didn't let Jake push the ball down the field. I think his longest completion was like 14 yards. So that's what they needed to do to get through that game. And, we'll see if they choose to open it up based on what they saw Winnipeg do against BC in the last game.
Well, it's interesting you saying that about the Chad Kelly, the one big play. Me covering this team closely and sort of, let's be honest, like on some level, my life's more interesting if the Stampeders are winning some of their games. I'm not saying I'm rooting for them, but it is.
It means you can put off covering the Flames a little longer, right?
A little bit longer.
Yeah.
I was
Before
wondering.
I tweet football references at you during hockey season.
I know. I'll still be doing a lots of football this time, but the problem is that one big play was killing the Stamps every time. So when I saw,
it was killing the Stamps every time because it was Jake Mayer giving it to the other team. That was the big play, right? So it comes with just such an emotional letdown. Like a big play, you can kind of live with, right? It's the other team doing it. When you throw a pick six, that's you doing it to yourself. It has a whole different set of ramifications to the game. Just look at the stats on teams that give up return touchdowns or turnover touchdowns and just how difficult it becomes to claw back and win a game.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. When it wasn't Jake, it was special teams, right? Like against the Riders, it was the 2 Mario Alford returns. And that's the thing. Like they may just have to win a little bit boring for a little while at least, right?
Yeah, and I think that, so often coaches get caught up with not just wanting to win, but they want to win their way. They want to show their offensive acumen, and they want to do it a certain way. And I just think after a while, you're going to need to get out of your own way and just decide we're going to win however it needs to happen. And I think that was a bit of a watershed moment for Calgary, and especially just when you looked at how committed they were to the run. I mean, we just haven't seen enough of that this year.
Well, which is why I'm so fascinated with this Lions game, because yes, they're going to have Kadeem back, and they're going to. I'm 100% convinced it'll be Kadeem and Diedrich. They're going to try to establish the run, but like this Lions defensive line is sort of like my story of the year in a lot of ways. Like they're second. I think they've got the second most sacks, but they're also allowing the second least rushing yards. So, like if we combine those two, they're the best D line in the league by a considerable distance, in my opinion.
Well, maybe. I think they've kind of come of age. Josh Banks coming back into the lineup is going to help their run defense. He missed the last game with a hamstring injury. They were a little cautious with it. So when he's in the middle, they're better. They lose Sione Tuhema, the defensive end, for this game. So they've had a pretty good rotation on the edges coming in. You don't want to, David Menard's one of those players that does a really good job until you play him every down, right? Yeah. And then it's not as good. So he's better in a rotation. So we'll see who they kind of work in with him in that. A year ago, the Lions still struggled defending the run. But if they could get into a certain situation in selected games, then it wouldn't expose them. I mean, you go to the playoff game against Calgary last year, Calgary just chose not to run the ball, right? It was ridiculous. And they didn't commit to it at the first during the season opener this year as well, right? So now coming off of last game and getting Kadeem back, will they commit to it, or will BC have some early success defending the run and then all of a sudden Calgary gets out of it? Because it feels like that's what happened in those two games. This year, I do believe BC's D-line is meaningfully better, right? And when I say come of age, it's like Matthew Betts becoming a complete player. It's Josh Banks, 2 years ago not knowing how to play in this league, now drawing double teams on the regular. So they legitimately know how to defend the run, whereas before it was just maybe get a lead and take them out of running the football that way. So it is going to be fascinating. And I'm curious to see, because also the Lions have kind of slowed down in terms of their sack parade the last two games, right? So will all of a sudden there be an uptick there again? Because that's going to matter too, in terms of, the one thing with Jake is I see his mechanics break down when he gets hit a few times. And so that didn't happen in the last game. They did a good job of protecting him with the run and with the offensive line. So will that happen again? Can BC dial up a pass rush, and will that impact Jake negatively if in fact it happens?
And you've described this mechanics issue to me. Is it fixable?
Yeah, it's totally fixable. It's totally fixable. I just find that when he feels a certain level of pressure, he tends to step away from throws. And that is something that it's forgiving, ironically, on deep shots. Because, those just generally aren't as risky. If you throw a pick and it's 40 yards downfield, it's as good as a punt. And in many cases, you're throwing those balls to a spot. But when you do that on short throws, particularly the flat, and you hang those throws and you're late on those throws, it's going back the other way, right? Like that's when it becomes catastrophic. So, but I do think it's fixable, but he needs to change that habit, right? And he needs to be able to, if not step into throws, at least set your feet and torque your hips into throws instead of stepping away from throws, because that's when you get into trouble, and that's what's cost him on those pick sixes. So, but it's absolutely fixable. The one thing he should do, he told me last year he was going to come out and work with Nathan Rourke's coach out here in Vancouver, Rob Williams, and he didn't. And Rob does a lot of that type of work. If he does that this offseason, that'll fix it. But I think he can fix it in season this year if he wants. He's got Mark Mueller and Dave Dickinson, two brilliant offensive minds and guys that know how to play the quarterback position around him. So, yeah, commit to it. You can do it. Jake's a smart guy, and he's not soft, right? It's not like that. It's not like he's afraid to take a hit. He's a tough guy. He can fix it.
Yeah, and I will say that here in Calgary, it has felt often like people are really impatient with him. Which is why I've enjoyed my conversations with you about the mechanic stuff, because I think it's a perspective, like you've coached, you've done it all, like you're actually like breaking it down as opposed to saying, oh, he doesn't deal well with pressure. Well, what is he doing wrong with pressure?
The Calgary fans would be wise to take a bit of a step back and realize that the last season and a half was not a mirage, right? Like this guy did some good things. And, I know people were sour at the playoff game last year and that there's been a slow start this year, but it's not all on him. Yeah, those mistakes are standing out, but when you still throw for 450 in a game, that's pretty good, right? Like you're executing the offense well when you consider the revolving door they've had at receiver this year, right? And at times along the offensive line, but they just haven't had that chemistry at receiver. And you talked about it in one of your columns, and I talked about it with him as well, that he wants to be able to he wants to be on the same page early, that they'll be, he'll get into a drop back and either he or the receiver will make the wrong adjustment to coverage in the play. And then they come back to the bench and they look at the iPad and the receiver realizes, yeah, I should have run this flatter, or I should have converted here. Or Jake will do it himself and say, yeah, I should have kind of done this instead. And he knows, he's like, we can't give up those plays and figure it out on the sidelines. We need to be able to play faster and figure it out in game. But that's not all on Jake. Calgary fans, you have got a bright, young, talented quarterback who you should want to be able to ride with. And he's that guy. And that's why I've stayed on his bandwagon and the Stamps bandwagon, because we got a lot of teams that are hitching their wagons to guys that have played one or two good games, but they have no other choice given what they're dealing with. Jake's a good player, and he's proven it over a large enough sample size. And Dave Dickinson is good at evaluating talent, right? When they got Bo Levi Mitchell, they knew the day they got him that they needed to create a pathway to make him the starter in 2 years. They know how to evaluate, and he's evaluating Jake well. So stick with him because he'll do just fine.
On that topic, because I've got you for about 3 more minutes, does it frustrate you? And to be honest, I know it does, but the fact that Vernon Adams just isn't, like, he's talked about as if he's still a question mark.
Yeah, it annoys me, and I say that because just as a fan of the league, not because I live in BC. And if you've ever followed me previously, like when he was in Montreal, like I love watching Vernon play, and I just think the best of Vernon is a good thing for the league. I'm looking at my dog here. I've got an empty plate. She just came into my office and she's licking my leftover potato salad. It's pretty good. So if you see if you feel the shaking, it's my dog, and my daughter's over here. Yeah, like when he threw the 6 interceptions, and Derek Taylor, who's a good friend of both of ours, just all of a sudden, there's a bunch of stuff out there, and Doug Brown, who I respect deeply, just, forget the first 3 games. This is now the real part. And if you really look at Vernon Adams, and I've said this, if you take the high and low water marks out, like if you take his 2019 season in Montreal out, and you take his performances with the BC Lions, good and bad, like the one bad game and everything else good, out, and that's a lot of good to take out, he's still he still won 9 of 14 games as a starter, right? And one of the games he lost, he played 5 plays before they gave him the hook last year in Montreal. Like his sample size, even if you take out the great stuff, and eliminate one bad game, his sample size, his numbers are good. He plays winning football. And when he's able to run around and make magic, that is a good thing for the league. So I don't want to see everybody just say, oh, this guy can't play. Like, he's shown enough good stuff in this league that, one bad game, it's like Bo Levi Mitchell throws 5 interceptions. No one says boo, because we know Bo Levi Mitchell is going to the Hall of Fame, right? Danny McManus has had 5 interception games, and Matt Dunnigan had 7 interception games. These are Hall of Fame quarterbacks. This happens sometimes. The best of Vernon Adams is a good thing for the entire Canadian Football League.
I couldn't agree more. You're more articulate than me, but I appreciate you saying it.
I'm just more long-winded.
No, you're a professional at speaking on mic, which is amazing for this show, because sometimes I do feel like we just kind of talk back and forth. I feel like a week ago I wouldn't have had a clear answer. Right now, Zach is the front runner for MLP, right? Like it's not even really all that close. I hate giving him credit.
I think Chad Kelly is in that conversation, right? And obviously, when Zach has the statement game that he did against BC, right, where you're throwing for over 400 yards and throw all those deep shot touchdowns, now all of a sudden everything flips really quickly. But going into that game, if you took the vote then, Chad Kelly wins it. So obviously, Chad got injured and Toronto finally loses, and Zach and the Bombers turned it up big. But I love the fact that we can have this conversation, and there's a lot of road left to run here, because BC and Winnipeg still have a huge game coming up in October, and that's going to tell a lot. BC's got 2 games coming up against Calgary. That's going to tell a lot. How does Chad Kelly bounce back from what happened? I know he's been getting a lot of practice reps on day 1 of the practice week. So, does he play this week, and how does he bounce back? So I like the fact that, it's not just Winnipeg and can anybody touch Winnipeg? There's some good teams here. And, and Calgary's bounced back. And now we've got a little more parity across the league than we've had in a while. But yeah, so I think if I had to vote today, I'd probably vote for Zach. But a week ago, I would have voted for Chad. And, I think that's awesome because next week I might give you a different vote.
Yeah, I occasionally have people say like, "Oh, you're talking about it too early," and I'm like, "The best thing we can do is
No,
talk
you're
about who the best
not.
players are, right?" Like,
Oh, like we should do a mid-season unofficial awards, right? Like they do that in the NHL. Why can't we do that in our league?
so can I? Okay, one last one. Who would be your rookie? Because I can't without stats. It's hard.
Oh God, you didn't prepare me for that.
I know. Sorry, it's not fair for me to throw that at you.
Well, because see, last year, like it was Dalton Schoen, and I know that, in Calgary, they was it Wall last year? Who got hurt?
Titus Wall, who got hurt?
Yeah, he had the 2 early defensive touchdowns, then he got hurt, and so he probably would have been in the West. Dalton Schoen would have been it in the East.
So I love. To answer, I love what Clark Barnes has done in a small sample size here in Calgary.
Yeah, Clark Barnes has been good.
Austin Mack a rookie?
Well, by the league standards, I think he is, and if he is, he certainly would have my vote at this stage.
Yeah,
Clark Barnes,
yeah.
The biggest disservice U Sports does to these players truly is just how damn short the season is, right? Like, I mean, we look at these guys, and like Clark Barnes has played 6 football games in the last 2 years, or 8 football games in the last 2 years. We're not even at Labor Day, and he is already feeling the effects of a long season, right? So, these guys have such a small amount of games played to evaluate them on, so we know if they're ready or not. But then, can they make it through a full season? So, Clark Barnes has had a really good start to the season, but like I said, he's been nicked up and kind of been in and out a bit. So, Austin Mack's kind of been the one guy that's really stood out, but I'd probably need a minute to look at it a little deeper.
And it's hard to look at it deeper right now. Although TSN, think you guys actually have good stats up. You guys have become sort of my go-to reliable place to do that. So
glad we can help. Hopefully the league can turn it around on that front.
I know. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but it would be. Man, have fun in Seattle. I'm jealous. That's fun.
Yeah, I'm back to back because I'll go tonight, and then tomorrow I got to go for the Seahawks game and do my Seahawk preview. And then I'm going to head to Denver next week to see our good friend Alex Singleton and the Broncos, and get into that as well. So lots of both football leagues on my menu for the next little bit here.
I don't know how you do it, man. I'd be falling asleep at the wheel.
I do it with a smile on my face, buddy.
Well, you're the best in the business, man. Thank you so much. Farhan Lalji from DSM. Guys, what are you doing tonight? I don't know what you're doing tonight. You're probably looking for something. Guys, you got to go check out Mug's Pub. This is probably my favorite pub in the city, 1330 15th Avenue Southwest, right in the Beltline. Honestly, they do it all. I, for years, played trivia on Wednesday nights at Mug's. It's the best trivia night in the city. Other nights, they got music. They got specials every single night. Some of the best food and drink specials in the entire city are at Mug's Pub. You want wine, you want beer, you want cocktails. They got it all. Big fan of their fish and chips. They got some amazing pizza. You want to watch the game? They got TV screens. You want to just have a drink with friends? Perfect spot to do it. You want to have some food? As I said, it's delicious. Mug's Pub. We love having them as a sponsor. We love having them just down the road from us here at our studios. Check out Mug's Pub. They're the best. All right, John Bender, Stampeder alumni. I feel like every time I acknowledge that I don't actually know how to introduce you.
That's fine.
Yeah.
All good. Most people usually just say University of Nevada alumni, Stampeder's alumni.
Perfect. University of Nevada alumni, Stampeder's alumni. John Bender. I've watched a couple road games with you this season. They haven't always gone the Stamps' way. And then I have not talked to you since this weekend when the Calgary Stampeders beat the Toronto Argonauts 20-7. For me, as a reporter, it sort of changed what I was seeing and changed the complexion of the summer for the Stampeders a little bit. What did it teach you?
Just a lot. I thought the Stamps were very resilient. I mean, I talked to a lot of people, and I mean, we all know some sports fans that are doom and gloom and pessimistic. And Stamps were 2-5 they had 4 games coming up against the top tier of the CFL. And some people were telling me they were staring 2-9 in the face here pretty soon. And
I may have said that.
Yeah,
I may have said that.
The best team in the CFL shows up at McMahon Stadium, and the Stampeders, they beat them handily, beat them by 13 points. So it showed me a lot just about the team. I think that we all knew they were young, that they're growing, and that they can really put a game together. And Jake Maier doesn't need to be all world, throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns to win football games for the Stampeders. They're a team that could beat you in multiple aspects of the game, whether it's special teams, defense, running the football, lots of different ways. So I was excited with what I saw, and I'm hoping that that's something that we're going to see more of as the season goes on.
It did look to me like the coaching staff dialed in on, okay, let's avoid mistakes. Let's play a little bit conservative. Let's, as you said, we don't need Jake to be Patrick Mahomes out there. Just get the ball out of his hands quickly, establish the run. That just, I've had some people say, well, against a team like the Bombers, you're going to need to put up more points. I just kind of feel like that's missing the point when the Argos we all thought were number one. So look, if you do this to the Argos, I think you can do this to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I don't disagree with. I think that if you win the game in the trenches, you'll win lots of football games. And Stampeders that might be the most experienced unit on the field is their offensive line and what they're able to do there. So if they can, run the football, create easy reads for Jake. I mean, Jake's still young. He's 14, 15 games as a starter. He's not, the other quarterbacks they've had here in Calgary in the past are in the last 3 or 4 have been Hall of Famers or close to. And, Jake's going to take some time to learn and grow, and he's got the right guys that he's growing with and learning from Dave Dickinson and some other members of the coaching staff. But, they got to lean on the run game. I think that's what they should have done kind of from the start. The offensive line has to lead the way there. And if they can do that and do some ball control, they ran 60 plays and Toronto ran 36. You're going to win a lot of football games if you run almost twice as many plays as the other team. So, that's something for them to build on and keep rolling from there.
And look, you've played offensive line, so this is one of those ones where I just sort of step aside and there have been questions about the Stampeders offensive line throughout the first 6 or 7 games of the season. Part of that I do think is I don't really think that they had their tackle positions sorted out. The departure of Julian Jones to the Philadelphia Eagles, and then obviously the release of Derek Dennis meant that they were sort of that. They had to sort that out. Zach Williams was hurt for a lot of training camp. Do you see it? Has it taken a step forward?
I think it's taken a huge step forward. They did just release Caleb Benenoch a couple weeks ago. So it sounds like, at the beginning of the training camp or beginning of the season, we were all talking about they have 3 tackles for 2 positions. Unfortunately, with the way that a lot of NFL, CFL, NCAA now, they hardly hit in practice. So for them to really find out what they have and, during crunch time, what they're going to work with, sometimes you got to learn those tough lessons in games. And early in the season, I think that there were some players that maybe were miscast, put in the wrong role. But it sounds like they got their guys now and rolling forward here. Offensive line's a position with a lot of continuity. You have to, it's 5 guys trying to work as one. And if you don't know what the guy beside you is going to do or what he's thinking or how he's going to react, it makes it very difficult. So the 3 offensive linemen in the middle, we've talked about this before with Sean McHugh and Ryan Sevier and Zach Williams, have done they've worked together a lot. You look at Derek Dennis, he had a left guard with Shane Bergman forever, now Zach Williams forever. And those guys, communicate very, very well. When you bring a new player into the fold, it's not just going to hit the ground running. It's going to be just like with Jake Maier. We were talking about him taking some time to learn and grow. Same idea, but it looks like things are turning in the right direction.
For you, as a Stampeders, you know this team better than anyone. Dedrick Mills, 137 yards last game. Kadeem Carey is coming back into the lineup, arguably the CFL's top running back. How would you like to see them use those 2 guys together? Like, I know we all say, oh, just, establish the run, pound the rock. But, let's say the first 3 drives are kind of short drives, that the run's not working. What happens then? And I'm asking genuinely because I don't understand how you do it. It's something that I say all the time. Right. Establish the run.
What I've often seen in the past from other teams is that if they have 2 running backs, the 2-headed running back, or however you want to call it, is that if they think that the running backs are similar or close to, often it goes by series. So if the first running back is the first series, often they go 2 series at a time. So maybe, if Kadeem Carey is feeling healthy, maybe Dedrick Mills gets the first 2 series. But if he lights it up, gets 8 carries for 80 yards, well, it might get the 3rd series. It might get the 4th series. But if he has a tough go out the gate where he has 4 carries for 11 yards or something, well, now maybe we see Kadeem Carey and see what he has and see what he brings. But unfortunately, the reality is, unfortunately, depends if you're a fan or if you're the player, is that they're going to keep giving the ball to the hot hand.
Yep.
And if that's Kadeem Carey or Dedrick Mills, they don't care. They just want to win football games. So, we're going to see how that plays out, I think, this weekend.
I'm not playing fantasy this year, but would you advise fantasy owners to avoid the Stampeders running backs this game?
No, I would lean heavy on Dedrick Mills. I think that they're going to ease Kadeem Carey back in but I mean, at a moment's notice, Dedrick Mills it's football. Any play, you sprain an ankle, you tweak something, and Kadeem Carey's right back in the spotlight. So anything can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I do also just think ultimately it's a nice problem for the Stampeders to have.
Great problem to have.
Yeah. What happens when Peyton Logan is ready? Who also gives you some options as returner. I'm not entirely clear on, but that's you cross that bridge when you get there.
Yeah, I mean, we had a similar problem, if you want to call it that, when I was in university. We had Colin Kaepernick. We had a couple running backs. We used to get in what's called this train formation at the goal line, where he could read option and kick it. I'd love to see the Stampeders do some of that stuff with Tommy Stevens, because you see them inside the 5, inside the 10. If they got some great running backs, some options, some stuff they can do. I mean, we all hate when we see quarterbacks throw the ball away close to the end zone, right? I think the Stampeders have the personnel where they're inside the 10. Forget about passing.
Really?
Yeah, forget. I mean, you got the personnel. You got a lot of the great guys that play on the team that you can do these things with. You can get Tommy Stevens. There's no reason why he shouldn't have 8, 9, 10 rushing touchdowns this year, and a lot of the running backs should as well. But I mean, they have an opportunity to really, that should be their side of the field that they're gonna, convert. We've seen them kick a lot of field goals this year, and I'd like to see them finish more drives with touchdowns.
I know you've watched the Lions a little bit. That's the Stampeders' opponent this weekend in Vancouver. I was talking to Farhan. He did point out their D-line has slowed down a little bit, but they're still one of the top units in the league. I assume that just sort of limiting the damage there that they do, keeping Drake standing, is the key.
Yeah, I think that the Lions were just at a great pace. It'd be hard for them to keep up that pace. I think Betts had 10 sacks in the first 8 games.
I mean, he was on like an all-time.
He was on pace for 20 plus sacks. And I don't know if that was realistic, but sooner or later they're going to get slowed down a bit. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be something, like in no league like the CFL does a sack just kill a drive. Because, once you get sacked, I mean, either it's second down, then now you're going to punt, or you're going to 2nd and 15 or whatever it is. So, I mean, sacks just kill drives. So you got to limit the other team's sacks. You got to try to get the quarterback on your own. And sacks also lead to turnovers, interceptions, fumbles, all of those things. So that's a big part of the football game. And if you can win the sack battle, often you're going to win the turnover battle. You win the turnover battle, often you win the football game.
Yeah, I would just note for listeners, currently Winnipeg is leading the league with 27 sacks. BC and Calgary actually are tied with 25. Calgary kind of snuck up on me there a little bit, eh?
Yeah, they had a bit of a slow start out the gate, but they've been really getting the quarterback the last 4 or 5 weeks, which really gives me a lot of confidence as a fan as what their defense can do. And obviously that's going to lead to hopefully more turnovers here in the future. And I think that when we check their turnover battle, what are they? They're about even, close to even right now.
Yeah, turnovers made.
I don't want to put you on the spot. But
no. So, so the Stamps have made have turned the ball over 17 times, which is the 3rd best mark in the league, and then their opponents have turned it over 16 times. So literally, they're a -1.
I think Jake Mayer's touchdown interception ratio right now is negative. He's got more interceptions than touchdowns. So obviously, and they lost 2 games in overtime. So, they're 3-5, and, you change the outcome of a couple of those games, they're 4-4, 5-3, and it's a whole different season. But there's lots of games left to be played, and we're going to see how it plays out. And they can, clean up those turnovers a little bit and create some more on the other side, then they're going to find a lot of success.
Yeah, it's honestly, it blows my mind. There has been a lot of anger in Calgary, which you are aware of, particularly about Jake. And I've defended Jake and will continue to defend Jake, in part just because I genuinely believe that, like, I've made this, comparison before, but like, I am technically a Buffalo Bills fan. Josh Allen made so many mistakes in his first year and then emerged as sort of one of the best quarterbacks. This is Jake's first real year as a starter. I don't think that those mistakes are surprising. I think that they're relatively predictable, that they're going to be growing pains as he emerges as sort of an everyday starter. Teams get tape on him. And I think that a little bit of patience is required.
Yeah, I think that we're learning as Stampeders fans how spoiled we were with Bo Levi Mitchell over the last decade and how hot he was out of the gate. But keep in mind, like, Bo didn't start when he was a rookie. He was a third string quarterback that was throwing the ball into the third deck in Montreal or whatever after he scored rushing touchdowns for a solid year, learning in the background before he really got his opportunity. I know Mayor's been around, but he's really got his opportunity now to run with it. And I think, just a little bit of patience. And if he ends up being a good quarterback that, wins a championship here, I think a lot of this will be forgotten. But I mean, obviously Dave Dickinson thinks he's, going to be able to, have an opportunity to win a lot of football games. And, they got to keep rolling with him. And we've seen them, 22 of 24. I don't remember how many pro quarterbacks you've seen have a 90% plus completion rate. And if he can do stuff like that here in the future, he's going to do very, very well.
I should probably have had this up. I just didn't know you were going to bring that up. But according to the CFL last week, Jake Mayer set a Calgary record with a 91.7 completion percentage, 22 of 24. So now those were not, like, again, they played conservative, they played smart. But like, what do you won by 13
against the number one team in the CFL?
Yeah, like,
I mean,
what's the alternative?
I don't know. People always ask, I wish this quarterback threw for 303 touchdowns. I wish he won the football game. And every football player feels that same way. The stat lines, they're nice to look at. They're fun. They're whatever. At the end of the day, all these guys want to do is win football games. It's all the coaches want to do. It's all the fans should really want also.
Yeah, and I think that if you look ahead at the Stamps now, look, they've got the Lions, who did the Lions Bombers game. Did that change your perception of either team at all? I mean, I feel like we all knew that the Bombers were pretty good. So it's okay, cool. You're capable of doing that. Doesn't totally surprise me. And then with the Lions, like, I just feel like these games happen in seasons, and that they didn't have Vernon. It was a backup quarterback.
It made me think. So I think a couple of weeks ago, I thought having Dane Evans and not Vernon Adams wasn't such a big deal. And after I watched them play the Blue Bombers, I thought, oh, this is a very big deal. So I think Vernon Adams is, allegedly supposed to be back this week. Is that what we're hearing?
Farhan says he has got a big brace on, but he's been taking starter reps for the first 2 days of practice.
And Vernon Adams, as long as he's been playing like his whole career, back to his days at Oregon and everything else, the knock on him has always been, can he stay healthy for the whole season? He's not a big guy. He's a mobile quarterback. He's not very large. He's going to take his licks here and there. And the Stampeders, I mean, just like they did last week, I mean, they weren't going out there trying to hurt Chad Kelly, but in the game, you lay a couple licks on a quarterback, sooner or later, somebody's going to get banged up, slow down, not want to go through the progressions as much, things like that. So this is something that they can keep working on, and I think that they're going to have an opportunity to get to VA. And if he's got a big knee brace on, I don't imagine he'll be as mobile as he usually is. We saw him come to McMahon Stadium and create all sorts of problems earlier this year. So we'll see what happens.
It's honestly like I can't like back this up. Like, this is purely anecdotal. But I've been watching Vernon frustrate the Stampeders, it feels like, since at least 2019. Like, when in that year in Montreal. And I honestly, something about that guy, I don't get how anyone doubts him. I know he has some bad games here and there, but most CFL quarterbacks do, and I just love watching him bounce around. When we look at the slate of games, I try to do this as once an episode. You have on Thursday Winnipeg at Edmonton. I barely think we need to talk about that game. Yeah. I'm excited to see Trey Ford get the start. There's that part of it. I just think that this is sort of throwing him into the Lions' den a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm excited to see Trey Ford also. I mean, he's going to have some stiff competition. He's going to have Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat coming right after him. So hopefully they're able to protect him a little better, and we'll see what happens there. But last time the Bombers and the Elks played, it was a close game.
That's true.
It worked out to be really close at the end.
That was what, week 2?
No, it was, I want to say week 5.
Okay, I'm going to pull that up.
Remember, right at the end of the game, Boyko got beat bad by Willie Jefferson to end the game.
I can't find it, but I believe you either way. No, I do, honestly. This is not great radio.
No problem.
Week 6, we've checked. Yeah, we'll look it up again. Regardless, I agree with you. I just, honestly, with Winnipeg doing what they did last week, with Kenny Lawler getting 200 receiving yards, with that team sort of looking like it's coming together a little bit. And like, Willie Jefferson's got 8 sacks. You said it. Like, this no hope Elks team. I don't care if you change your offensive coordinator. this just has the feeling of a game that makes me feel bad about myself and need a shower at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, if I was betting, what's the line at? I think it's double digits. I would imagine that yeah, you could take the Bombers by double digits, and I think that's probably where you're gonna make your money.
August 11th, my older sister's birthday. Saskatchewan at Montreal. I'm looking forward to this. I quietly think Mason Fine has been better than people are giving him credit for. I think that they're beginning to open up the playbook to him a little bit, and I just look. I like a guy who was super popular in one market and it kind of went sour, going back and playing his former team. So I love the Cody Fajardo angle. I I suspect Montreal wins this game, but the Riders have shown me enough that I think that this just has potential to be a really good, fun midsummer competitive CFL game.
Yeah, I agree. I think both teams have been really building here. There's kind of the top tier of the CFL. The top three teams would be Toronto, Winnipeg, and BC. And I think the next, we're trying to jockey to see who the top in the next tier is and who's able to move into the top tier. And I think that when we look at Montreal and Saskatchewan, this will be a good test for each of them to see where they're at and to see if they can build on what they've been doing already. Both teams are hanging right around the 500 mark. They can win a few more football games. They can solidify themselves in playoff standings and really build confidence. And I think that Cody Fajardo, I think he got a tough go here in Sask, playing injured most of last year. If you get sacked 70 times, I know a few of those are on you, but I don't think all of them are. And
I would love someone at some point to break that down because he's getting sacked a lot in Montreal too.
Yeah, I mean, but he's a mobile quarterback that tries to run as much as he can, which obviously is going to lead to a few sacks. But you have an 18-game season, right around 50 sacks would be a lot. 70 is a ton.
70 is too many.
70 is way too many. And to play and, continue coming out each week after you're getting banged up is going to be tough on the guys. So, it sounds like he's really hit the ground running here in Montreal. Seems like he's in a good place. And if he can keep building there, maybe, they're going to have a great chance in the playoffs as well and see what they can do in the East.
Totally. We sort of talked about Stamps Lions, Red Blacks Argos. I think a lot of this depends for me on if Chad Kelly's playing. I will say that the shine has come off Dustin Crum a little bit for me. I still really like that Red Blacks defense, and I think they can cause trouble for anyone. But look, the Argos without Chad Kelly did not look like they could do anything against the Stamps last week. So I have a hard time. I think the Red Blacks can win this if Chad Kelly's not in.
Yeah, I think they have an opportunity. I'm interested to see how the Argos bounce back because, a week ago they were this juggernaut 6-0. Nobody can beat them. Sean Oakman playing in the middle, having a hard time. Swag Kelly throwing the football all over the field. And, AJ Oled, the big running back. And the Stampeders kind of proved that that's not always the case. And now, what's Ottawa going to be able to do? And is Ottawa going to be able to build? Dustin Crum started out hot. Is he going to be able to keep building from there and see what they can do on their team? So I'm interested to see how that plays out. I would expect that the Argos will be bouncing back to where they are, but maybe they don't. Sometimes we see teams that come out the gate, 6, 7, 8-0, and then they slow down from there and vice versa. So be interesting to see kind of how the season prevails and how it goes on from here.
Yeah. Can agree more. Sort of last general question. And you may not, I do not prep you for these things. I just kind of ask questions. And so Edmonton replaced their offensive coordinator. Yeah. Now the Ticats, Tommy Condell, they parted ways. Scott Milanovich takes over. Obviously, Scott Milanovich, I just think the fact that he won Grey Cups with Ricky Ray, with Anthony Calvillo, the fact that he's got another sort of older quarterback in in Bo Levi Mitchell. I like that angle. I think it's fun to watch. But how, you've played at the highest level. What happens when an offensive coordinator is gone? How much does everything that the team is doing offensively sort of change?
I've never had one in season. I've heard of them happening in season. I've had an offensive coordinator change on the off season. But I would imagine that, especially if they're going to change in season, I don't think they're going to take the old playbook and throw it in the trash. They're probably just going to find a few wrinkles on the offense, find a few different things that they can try to exploit. What I find that we see with offensive coordinators that we've seen in Edmonton, that we've seen in Hamilton, is they kind of just get stuck. They try to do things that don't work. They're, always, kicking field goals, not scoring touchdowns. The points aren't working. The offensive line's having a hard time understanding what their assignments are. The wide receivers, the running backs. what you want in an offense is you want to know who your playmakers are. You want to know who the guys who can step up when you need them are. And you want to know when it's, 2nd and 1, 3rd and 2, whatever you want, and you need a play, which guys you can rely on. And I think when you see offensive coordinators let go is when we look at teams that they don't know who those guys are. They haven't figured it out. They're trying to figure it out, and they're trying to make things happen. And some guys at times they just don't have the personnel for what they're trying to do. And, if that's what they know how to do, and they don't have the personnel, it's not going to be a good match.
It's fascinating. Yeah. It's one of those questions that just, I feel like unless we've played, it's like, I don't know. I see a new offensive coordinator. I assume that they're not just going to come in and completely reinvent the wheel. But then there's also this part of me that's like, well, if you're not going to make major changes, why not just wait? But as you explained, that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they also want to know what they have. I mean, I think like in Edmonton, for example, like why go through the rest of the season? Like if you know you're going to let that guy go at the end of the season or whenever his contract's up, so that you're not violating the CFL salary cap, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you know that he's probably not coming back, well, let's see what else you got here. Maybe you have a play caller in-house that potentially is looking for a new job somewhere else in the offseason. Let's give him the keys to the car and let's see what he can do with it. And if that's an opportunity for a coach to grow and go into a new opportunity, because all these coaches like Dave Dickinson, when I was on the Stampeders, he was the offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 10 plus years later, he's the coach and the GM. And when I was on the Stampeders, Brent Munson was the strength coach and the linebackers coach. Now he's a D coordinator. So these guys, they move up into different roles, and if an opportunity presents itself, they can show that they're willing to work hard to find, the ways that they think that they can beat teams and exploit teams, and opportunities to see what they got.
Scott Milanovich is a pretty nice option.
He should have been knocking at the door the whole season, right?
Yeah.
It's weird that he wasn't in a higher role to begin with, to be honest.
Completely. Well, John, man, thank you so much for coming in. As I've said several times, I know that Busby and Cammie Kepke we're all just going to get some Fraser and Fig. We're going to do a special episode and just eat some charcuterie. So I don't know when that's going to be. But
you guys just let me know whenever you're ready.
You bet, buddy. Thank you so much. Cheers.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you to John Bender. Thank you to Farhan Lalji from TSN. It's been fun. Two guys who honestly they know so much about football. They know so much about the CFL, and brought a very different perspective to what I can bring, or generally us lowly newspaper folks can do. So super appreciate that from both Bender and Farhan. Thank you guys, and of course, thank you to our sponsors, Fraser and Fig. We love Fraser and Fig. We talk about them every week. And Muggs Pub. Gonna be grabbing a drink at Muggs Pub. Playing some trivia soon. So thank you to both of them. We super appreciate them. And thank you to you, our listeners. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends, guys. Honestly, if you have CFL fans in your life who want a little bit of extra content, they tell them where to find us. We're gonna be here every week. Keep going throughout the rest of the season. And I'm Danny Austin. This is live from the 55 on the Nation Network. Super appreciate you guys listening. Cheers.